Obviously, the Chicago Bears spent a second-round pick on Chase Claypool. I think it's a very fascinating trade. I wanted to get into the film and talk about what he could bring to the Chicago Bears, how he'll fit in that scheme, and how he was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers prior to this trade. So let's get into all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then figure out if this was the right trade or the wrong trade by both sides. So first, let's talk about a play like this. You have Chase Claypool just trying to get into a gap in coverage. One of the interesting things we saw about Chase Claypool with the Pittsburgh Steelers is they really played him a lot in the slot this season. He was playing a lot of slot because the reality is, I think they just like Deontay Johnson and George Pickens on the outside better than they like Claypool on the outside. They really didn't have a place for him, despite the fact that Claypool, I feel like for the most part, most of his more impressive wins came from being an outside the numbers receiver. However, on this play, as he tries to get to a gap in coverage, you see Winfield, the safety for Tampa Bay, the very good safety for Tampa Bay, is very much all over this. He's prepared for a potential route by Claypool to try and get into a gap in coverage. However, Claypool does make a really good move, and he is able to get just enough separation to pick up a first down on a third down and long, and that was a huge play in that football game. If they didn't get that, Tampa Bay would have gotten the ball back down just 2 with a couple minutes left, a chance to win the game. The Buccaneers never got the ball back. That was, that led to the really game-winning ending drive, and that wasn't the only play Claypool made in that series. This one was another one, probably a even more impressive play, I would say, by Claypool, and these are the things he's capable of, where it's going to be zone coverage, and you have a receiver running a clear-out route on the bottom of the screen. Claypool is the one lined up on the top of the screen that will be running towards the bottom of the screen. So there's a chance that there could be nobody in the area. The way that Tampa Bay can't cover this is if a linebacker sees this, reads it, and gets over and covers Claypool. Look at how, when this play begins, you do see Claypool. At this point, it's nothing too special. One thing you have to note is Lavonte David reads this play. Again, tough guy to fool, that Lavonte David. He's being smart. He realizes what's happening, and he's getting over to try and play in coverage. But even as great as Lavonte David is at a coverage linebacker, you're still a linebacker against a receiver. You have a mismatch here if you're Pittsburgh, and this is what Claypool is going to take advantage of. As you see, he does get open and eventually turns upfield, trying to, again, get a first down on a third down and long right here that could prolong this drive. You see that he's open. I mean, this is really wide open, and this is a play that has to be made if you're Mitchell Trubisky, but Trubisky's throw is not going to be perfect. Typically, you probably want this closer to the inside. Trubisky's going to go the other way, despite the fact that Claypool's hips are turned towards the top of the screen. Look, Trubisky's throw is behind, but Claypool adjusts to it, makes really an impressive catch, and is able to pick up that first down. That's an incredibly impressive play by Claypool, and this just feels like this is why the Bears want Chase Claypool, right? He is someone who, he has his flaws. He's not a superstar receiver, but the Bears really could use someone who can make the tough catch, who, when Fields does miss a throw, because every quarterback misses throws, he can still turn it into a completion. Stuff like that can really make things easier on a young quarterback, and it feels like that's the pro of Chase Claypool. However, now let's go over to the cons of this trade. Steelers fans will tell you Claypool has not been as dominant as we've seen him in his rookie year, really. Like something like this, it's a man coverage play, so a one-on-one matchup. It feels like one of the Bears' biggest issues is the fact that they don't have a ton of guys who are out there winning one-on-one matchups consistently. I think that's fair to say, which is part of why they gave up a second-round pick, and their own second-round pick, I should add, to make sure that they can get a guy who can at least be relatively competitive. However, as you see when this play begins, there's a tad of separation. There's a chance where I feel if it's a perfect window throw, if up potentially, Claypool could go up and make the grab and get a completion here. But that is sometimes a bit of an issue where when you're saying you have to make a perfect throw, it's not the ideal situation. That's not a number 1 receiver. That's a number 2 or maybe even a number 3 receiver. The number 1 receiver is the guy who you don't have to make a perfect throw to get a completion. Pickett's throw maybe could have been a bit higher, but that does get knocked away. There wasn't enough separation there. And that's one of the things about Chase Claypool is he isn't someone who is consistently getting open and consistently winning by a ton. potentially part of why his rookie season was much better than his seasons the past couple of years is because his rookie season, he had much better quarterback play than he has had the past couple of years. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if you're a Bears fan, you're saying, hey, put him in a better situation. Usually going to Chicago isn't a better situation, but in this instance, it actually might be. Put him in a better situation, we might see some of that old Chase Claypool again. Going over to this play now, this is, I think, what the Bears are bringing Claypool in to do. They don't really have a lot of guys who can win against these types of concepts. It's a cover one play, and Claypool is running a go route to get outside the numbers, and these are the types of plays that you really need to be able to hit on in today's NFL. If teams are playing cover one, you have to take advantage of deep shots down the field. And for someone like Claypool, I'm assuming in Chicago, they're hoping he can be able to do this. Now, he would probably start off outside the numbers as opposed to here where he's starting off as the number 2 receiver, but he's basically going to, he's going to be the guy who is working on the outside. But look, as you see, he's going to, again, generate a little bit of separation. There's a chance this works, and then he falls down, resulting in, helping result in that interception right there. I'm not saying every time he does this, he's falling down. I'm just saying that he hasn't won these as consistently as he did in his rookie season. And that is absolutely a fair concern if you're a team that just spent a valuable draft pick on him. For the Steelers' perspective, this is a no-brainer win, right? He's someone who they didn't have a place for. They're getting, at the very worst, fair value, potentially very good value for a wide receiver who, only has this year and next year of cheap play left because he wasn't the first-round pick, no fifth-year options. So, and you're not going to be competitive this year if you're the Steelers. Probably not going to be competitive next year if you're the Steelers. So get draft capital instead for a guy who you don't have a place for. Absolutely makes sense. From the Bears' perspective, though, is this a good trade or not? Personally, I think getting Chase Claypool is a no-brainer good move. Just that in a vacuum clearly makes a lot of sense in my opinion. He is someone who I do think would work better in your offense than he works in the Steelers' offense right now. So you're probably getting someone who has more value for your team than he does for his current team. So those kind of trades always feel like they're smart trades to me. You want to figure out what you have in Justin Fields, so getting him some help also makes some sense to me. The whole question I have with this trade was, did you give up too much for this to happen? If we look at his Pro Football Focus grades, so it's a little bit cut off the 2022 year, but that's 82nd out of 113th. That was his grade this year, so a 61.3. It was a little bit better in 2021. He was a 65th best receiver, and then 2020, he was the 36th best receiver according to PFF. So if you believe in these grades, in his rookie year, he was a fringe number 1, good number 2 receiver. In his second year, he was a fringe number 2, good number 3 receiver. In this year, he's been a fringe number 3 receiver. So that's not ideal. However, another interesting way to view it is if you flipped these 3 seasons and you said his first year wasn't very good, his second year was better, in his third year he was very good, he's probably taking a first to get rid of him. So if you just jumbled up the good games he had, maybe that's a way to view it. Of course, that's not exactly fair to do it that way, but that's just a way you could do it if you want to, or the way you could look at it and say, hey, we have seen him play very good. We've seen a scenario where only giving up a second-round pick for him would actually be a steal in this scenario. We've also seen a situation where giving up a second-round pick for him is a massive overpay. So my reaction, I think my final verdict on if this was a good trade by the Chicago Bears was, I think it was a good trade, but I still think they overpaid. That's kind of my thing. I don't hate it. I'm kind of lukewarm on the trade, I guess. Maybe I'll say it's a fine trade. I think that they overpaid a little bit, but you know what? Receivers are important. Receivers are how you win football games in today's NFL. Overpaying for receivers, there's a good chance that second-round pick doesn't work out anyway. Go out, get someone who should at least be a solid player. You don't have to question how good he is necessarily, because you pretty much know to some degree where his range is. You know what he can do and what he can't do, just to varying degrees of success over his career. There is a risk factor, but there's a risk factor in every move. So I think I'll say I like the trade, but still feel like it's a bit of an overpay, which is why I really like the trade from the Steelers' perspective. That's kind of my view on all of this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on this move by Chicago? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.